hope you enjoyed the first day of Generosity Without Borders if you were able to attend any of the sessions yesterday. I encourage you all that you should be able to use the chat. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can share your name, your location, and your organization where you're joining from. So encourage you to do that. And then again, as folks are trickling in, we do have translation happening for the beginning and end of this session before we move into breakout rooms. And in breakout rooms, we will be doing them by language. I'll explain that in just a second, but just wanted to share that with everyone. So encourage you to say hello in the chat, and thank you for being here. So I'm Kelsey. I'm the Director of Partnerships at the GivingTuesday Data Commons. If you were able to catch the opening session yesterday, you might have met my colleague Woodrow, who works at the Data Commons. I'm going to start by just sharing a little bit more about what the Data Commons is before we get into the session. But most of this session today will be us speaking together in breakout rooms, not us talking at you. So we invite you to participate. This is interactive. So don't be alarmed, don't be scared, but we are going to ask you to chat and speak with us if you're comfortable. So Stephanie, are we sharing screen yet? I don't think, yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to see. Awesome, okay. So we are going to take a data walk today. I'm going to explain more about that in just a second. But who are we? What is the GivingTuesday Data Commons? If you are not familiar, the Data Commons was developed in response to our efforts to measure the impact of Giving Tuesday, the day itself. We were looking for places to measure the sort of fundraising success, what generosity behaviors were happening around the world on Giving Tuesday, and didn't know where to look. And so we worked with many partners to be able to do this at either like country or global levels to understand what was happening on Giving Tuesday. And quickly that evolved and we made it more holistic. So looking at giving behaviors and trends beyond just the day of Giving Tuesday. And our goal is to provide what we think the commercial sector has long benefited from, which is data, to help us make better decisions, to learn together, to adapt, to shift practice, innovate, and make all of us a little bit better. We look at understanding generosity holistically, from understanding both the sort of financial and fundraising and capital streams to the non-monetary. So we look at giving behaviors, trends, attitudes, values, and what sort of fundamental shifts drive those actions. We do that in a couple of different ways. So we provide data sets that we make accessible, both our own data sets that we manage and ones that we house for others, and we provide infrastructure for academics and researchers to learn and study. We curate resource libraries with the latest research and insights, not only that we produce, but we house the latest sort of publications and blogs and studies from around the world in a couple different ways. We have a resource library. We also provide data visualizations, so charts and graphs from different reports where folks can use those in their own reporting. We convene different stakeholders in the sort of generosity academic space to look at our research questions, to help us identify research questions, to give us feedback on our research around a bunch of different topics. We have an online giving working group, a generosity AI working group, as well as others. And then I think what we are most well known for is that we publish our own research. And we're going to look at some of that research today together. But we produce our own research and insights and make all of that accessible. We have a couple different reports that we run. We're going to share a bunch of links in the chat so you can check all of that out. And I think on the next slide, we have a QR code for our website. If you're not familiar with the Data Commons, I encourage you to give it a look. Okay, I have the honor of introducing the incredible team that helped put this session together and that are also going to facilitate and lead us through the discussion today. Big shout out to Stephanie for really running this session and coordinating it. Stephanie's going to run the Portuguese speaking room in a second. Otto will be running the Spanish speaking room, and Annie, who is a data scientist on our team and actually worked on the report that we're going to talk about, is going to lead the English speaking room. And major props to Anita. I'm sure some of you know Anita, but Anita on the LAC Hub team that helped put this event together is here helping on the back end. Okay, so what are we going to do today? What is a data walk? We are going to take all of you on a data walk. So a data walk by our definition is designed to focus on a single finding together from a research project. We'll provide a visualization from a report, and then we will facilitate an open discussion about that data, how to interpret it, how to interrogate it, any feelings that emerge as we're looking at some of the data, with the goal of bringing you closer to data. So overcoming if you are sort of resistant to data or you lack confidence in using data in your work, we hope that this will help get you a little bit more comfortable talking about data, and also to help you gain new insights that might change your understanding of generosity and enable you to maybe design more effective strategies in your own work to grow it, so that we can do the three things that are listed on this screen, so that we can understand what is happening as it relates to generosity at large in your own context as well, to train ourselves on how to make decisions based on evidence, and ultimately to hopefully inspire more generosity. So I'm going to go over some of the logistics of how this will work. We will also talk through this in the breakout rooms, but what's going to happen is you'll move into breakout rooms and we will show you a visual representation of a data finding. And then we'll talk about it. So how to interpret it, how it might relate to your work. We're going to ask you a series of questions. These are meant to be interactive. We have facilitators in each of the rooms, but we really invite you to share, to ask questions. It's okay if you have no idea what this means, but we really want you to, open up a dialogue with the people in your room. We think that data walks work best when you are sort of receptive and open to hearing everyone's opinion, so we invite you to listen as well. We have a few ground rules. They're up on the screen right here. We invite you to be respectful, and to listen, to be open-minded and willing to learn, to be inclusive, and give others a chance to speak in your room, and to participate, really. So I'm just going to give a quick background on the report that we'll be talking about. So the insights that we're going to share in the rooms are from our latest State of Generosity report. This was just recently released this past summer, and highlights our sort of annual reflection at GivingTuesday on the state of generosity around the world, specifically this year where there's been a lot of global uncertainty. We looked at what some 2024 data might be able to tell us about 2025. We're well into 2025 now, so we sort of validated some of that in the report as well. We are focusing on this data in the data walk on some points specific to the different types of giving worldwide, monetary giving per generation, and if there is time to spare in your room, we'll look at levels of polarization around the world. I want to flag that we are focusing our visualizations more specifically on Brazil and Mexico, but we encourage you to reflect on that data as it might relate to your own country and context. And with that, I know we're coming close to time. I want to get you into breakout rooms. There are just a couple things we hope you leave this session with. We hope that you leave having learned something new, maybe met someone new, and ready to sort of dive into collaborative discussion. Okay, we're going to come back after the breakout rooms and have a little bit of time to discuss what you talked about. But I believe Anita is going to open breakout rooms for you all to choose the language that you would like to speak in for your data walk. And as I mentioned at the top, we'll have facilitators in each of those rooms. So a Spanish speaking room, a Portuguese speaking room, and an English speaking room. Welcome back, everyone. I think we have everybody back at this point. I hope that you had some great discussions. I was lurking in the Spanish speaking room, and it looked like a great discussion. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about what everybody talked about in your rooms. I'm gonna just call on Ada and Annie to share back, and if there are others in the room that want to chime in on anything, I think please feel free. But let's hear how the discussions went in each of the rooms. Maybe I'll turn it over to you first, Ada. Do you want to share a little bit more about what you guys talked about?
Sure. I'm trying to switch from Spanish to English. I might struggle a little, but it was a very interesting conversation we had in the Spanish room. We managed to tackle two of the visualizations, the one from the Venn diagrams and the one from the bar graph. And things that stood out were how this process of looking at the graphs helped envision the types of generosity and how we could approach donors differently. So it was very helpful to think that you could ask not just for money, but other kinds of generosity. And people were sharing how in their experience, asking for one type of generosity can like transcend into a different type of generosity with supporters. But overall, they said that the data did reflect the reality of the countries that we had in the Reka room, just at a different scale. So we knew that in Mexico or Brazil, the volume is different, but the percentages do reflect what we have in Latin America in the experience of the people who were attending our room. And from the second one that talked about the generations, or they were saying that it was interesting to see that some lines of styles of giving were inherited from generation to generation, but some others were finding new expressions of generosity, or like new styles of showing that generosity. And people started sharing about how social media plays a role in how they find spaces to give, and how those behaviors shift quite drastically from one generation to other, and how it's very important for us to keep an eye on those generations. And the other important thing is that some of the people in the breakout room said that they didn't have a way to actually know if the data reflected their reality, because they don't have that granularity on the people who are they are interacting with. Sometimes they interact with organizations rather than with individuals, so that makes it difficult for the data to mean something, like to be compared.
I'm curiously taking notes as you're talking. It's all really, really interesting feedback and discussion. Annie, do you want to share a little bit more about what you talked about in the English speaking room?
Yes, and we were lucky to have an English ex Portuguese combination, as well as having Victoria and Stephanie in the room as well. So if I miss anything, either of you feel free to jump in. We also got to the first two visualizations, Venn diagrams, and breakdown by generations. When we were looking at the Venn diagrams, a lot of our discussion focused around specifically the giving of objects, giving of items portions of the charts, and how that relates to sort of in-kind donation patterns within the various organizational contexts that were represented. The participants in the English speaking room generally felt that the fact that there was a lot of emphasis on in-kind donations was quite reflective of their experience of people maybe being maybe struggling with the broadening of a donor base or getting people to give money or participating in monetary based fundraising drives, but that people are very, very willing and actively do give in-kind donations, whether that's art supplies or clothing to sort of various programs that are in a sort of day-to-day manner. We talked a little bit about the comparison between different country contexts, how Brazil and Mexico and the United States had very, very similar distributions of behaviors, and how India and Kenya were a bit different, but that there was sort of this North American similarity across the different breakdowns of behavioral types, and also how volunteering was very obviously a sort of smaller chunk of the pie, that 3%, pretty consistently across the board. The 3% of only volunteers was also was also very interesting to see that consistency, but also that maybe it's slightly higher in a lot of people's experiences. And Victoria brought up as well that while we were discussing this mostly in an organizational context, this is really people's self-reported behaviors that span across both different recipient types, but also that they may volunteer with one organization and give items to another. And so they're represented in that overlap on these charts, but maybe not within individual organizations. Donor bases are displaying that overlapping behavior. And then as far as the age chart, lots of sort of similar points to what Ada brought up as far as technology and social media. That was a lot of the focus of our conversation. We talked a lot about how different technology types make it easier for younger people to give and maybe are not being as easily or as readily used by older generations. And that might be the cause for some of the sort of decreases with age that we see on this chart. But also a really important point was brought up about donation amounts. So when people are doing sort of maybe social media crowdfunding or app and technology based donations, that these are likely not your major donors. It makes it easier to give, but people who are giving via these platforms are likely not your sort of core, forming your core funding base or giving, those higher donation amounts, as well as, that being a behavior that's related to technology, but also that being something that's observed, generally speaking, with age, with lots of major donors generally falling in those older age groups, even if they're giving less frequently. And then we also talked a little bit about the comparison between this chart and the breakdowns of giving behaviors on the Venn diagrams, largely as it relates to Kenya. Looking at India and Kenya with the center of those Venn diagrams being the biggest component, specifically in Kenya with 90% of people giving in all forms, and then looking at monetary giving and seeing that also almost everyone gives in a monetary form. When we compare that across countries, the behavioral profile of people in Kenya and also India is actually quite different from other monetary giving behaviors as displayed on this chart, because a monetary giver in Kenya is very likely to also be giving items and volunteering, and that center portion is a lot smaller in the Canada, US, Mexico, UK, and Brazil context. So what a monetary giver is, regardless of age group, might look very different depending on context.
Fascinating. So sounds like there were some good discussions. We don't have time to hear, I don't think, from anyone else, because I want to make sure you all have time to get to your next session that you're attending. But if you are feeling passionate, would love for you to share just like a word in the chat about the experience. Even if you found the data to be like completely boring or totally not representative of your experience, I hope it was at least fun to talk about with your fellow attendees, and you thought it was a good discussion. So I also want to share that this is an exercise that you could do with your own data or your own work or any data that you are sort of, you're reading a report and you want to have a discussion with your colleagues about it. This is an exercise that you can do with your own teams, with your own, staff, or inside of your work in any way. So invite you to also take this and make it your own, and use it as a tool for you to get more comfortable with data, or talk about data. So I hope you had fun. I also want to say that we want more data in LAC. And we're working really closely with Anita and JP and the team to do more data projects in the region. So really excited about some work to come there. We're working with them on something called the Online Giving Radar. So hopefully we'll have more to share next week about that. So not next week, sorry, next year. Not next week. That would be great if we had it next week, but we won't. Okay, and I think that was everything that we wanted to share with all of you. Stephanie just shared a bunch of links in the chat if you're interested in reaching out to us or learning more about what we do. Those are some emails, both the LAC team and the data team, to get in touch with us. And really appreciate your time and your energy. I think it's a little bit scary to participate in interactive sessions when you're not familiar with the people in the rooms. And last thing I'll say is thank you, Stephanie, Annie, and Ada for leading the discussions. Okay. Thank you all for being here. I hope you have a great rest of your Generosity Without Borders experience, and attend other sessions during the day today.